You ready?
Good evening, everybody. We're sitting with Nick Cave. I talked to Nick a couple of days ago. He was in Chicago. Now he's in Denver at the Denver Art Museum, where he has a one-person show. And then soon he's going to be doing a performance there, a dance performance, and they are rehearsing that dance. Nick, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Paul. How are you?
I'm excellent, man. It's good to be here with you. This is fun. Let me ask you some questions. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born in Fulton, Missouri. That's in, a little town outside of Columbia. Pardon me?
You grew up there? You went to high school there, too?
No, I went to high school. Then I moved when I was 13 to Columbia, Missouri, which is more of a college town, and did high school there. And then from there, went to the Kansas City Art Institute.
Which is where you met my wife.
Is where I did what?
Met my wife.
I sure did.
Excellent. All right, and what did you major in art school?
You know, in undergraduate, I was sort of focusing on performance. I was doing a lot of performance work. I was also doing working between textiles and sculpture at the time, and then also taking dance at the University of Kansas City. They had an affiliated Alvin Ailey program there, so that's why I was starting to look at movement as a device within my work.
That's interesting. All right. So, was your work? I'm stuttering. What I want to say is, it's not like you really focused, is it? You were doing a lot of different directions.
I've always been sort of interested in just sort of finding the means necessary to support the idea. So it's not that I was really, I think, really, I was concentrated, I think, more into a textile sort of sensibility, but was very sort of organic in terms of my movement across a number of disciplines.
Did you have role models then? I mean, it seems to me like you totally paved your own path.
Well, I think I had role models because I think at the Kansas City Art Institute, all of my professors that I worked with all sort of came from Crandall. So they really sort of brought this level of aesthetic to my work, which was really, really quite interesting and were very, very tough structures to work with. Demanded a lot and expected a lot from me. So I really felt that I got this really strong foundation.
That's cool. How much time was there between Kansas City and graduate school?
Between undergraduate and graduate school was 2.5 years.
And what did you do during that 2.5-year time period?
In the 2.5 years, I got a studio right away.
Where, in Kansas City or somewhere else?
In Kansas City.
Okay.
And then I got a job. I was visual coordinator for Macy's, and sort of did that, which really allowed me this sort of a level of independence. I didn't have to work. I was interested in doing something that was creative. I didn't want to wear a tie or a suit to work. Wanted to wear jeans and T-shirt, but needed a job. And then it provided me this platform to sort of work in the area of display. So I was really creating these installations on one hand, which was very interesting for me. And now that I look back, I really sort of, see that it really sort of provides me this sort of venue to sort of still sort of think about space and the body in space. So it was interesting in that way.
What made you decide to go to graduate school? What challenged you? Why did you do that?
I just was sort of felt that I just needed more of a more of a sort of structure in my life, and I wasn't really interested in it for a teaching purpose, but really just wanted to continue to have a stronger sort of dialogue around art and these ideas that I was interested in. So I just felt that I just needed to do it. I was working for Macy's, then I got a job working at Hallmark, and really wasn't happy there. And then I told my mom that I'm going to go to grad school, and she said, "You're on your own." And so I just, packed up and left.
Okay. But I feel like an awful lot of the content in your artwork comes from how you were raised, where you were raised, the outdoors, different issues that you face. Don't you feel that your art's fairly autobiographical?
Yeah, I think a lot of my work is sort of, I think it's part of it's that, but I think it's also sort of, having this sort of independence and this sort of free range to sort of figure out what the hell I was really interested in. I think, growing up not having a lot really made me sort of have this sort of imaginary sort of space in my head to sort of think in a different sort of way. Not being surrounded by art, not being introduced to art as a kid, as a teenager. I just sort of, but yet I was very creative. So I was really, there was no really sort of set sort of structure sort of at the beginning. It was a very naive approach to things, which I think plays a very critical sort of aspect in my work today.
A lot of your art, a fair amount of your art has been flat and on the wall, and a fair amount of your art, more of your art recently has been, very three-dimensional and activated by people wearing what you call sound suits. How do you go back and forth between 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions? How do you go back? How do you know what to make next? Looking backwards, we'll look forwards in a moment, but looking backwards, how did you know the pace and the pulse of what you should be doing?
Because I pay a great deal of attention to every aspect of my work. It really is, it's strategically making decisions. It's, strategically sort of laying down the sort of fundamental sort of foundation to sort of, and then from that point negotiating what works in the moment. Right now I'm taking a 10-year hiatus from sound suits because it's just an intuition. It's time. There's other things I'm interested in, but it comes down to the essence. How do you transfer the essence of your work into this new sort of genre or media? And I think that's what's really the most important factor is, how do you sort of put into that conviction? How do you bring that conviction? But all of that comes through just exercise. I'm willing to take the chance. I will gamble it all because how I'm made up. I'm made up I'm attracted to the seduction of the fear of it all.
Thank you. I like that. I appreciate that you say that. Do you feel like the essence of your art is fairly consistent across media?
I think so. I think I take a lot of consideration on how the work is built. I think I take a lot of consideration on the aesthetic. I think that, there's a certain sort of quality that I think that, art that sort of is around and stays around. There's a certain sort of level of sort of again, it's there's this sort of high sort of quality. There's a gauge that, and I think things change according to what happens around the gallery and what happens around, what happens when your prices start to increase. Well, I think about, like, what do I need to change in the work in order for it to sort of support that? So, it continues to sort of, the elevation of the sort of, the quality of the work changes a great deal.
How many galleries you have? One main art gallery, right?
Yeah, I only work with Jack Shaman in New York.
But you don't have exhibits in other galleries at all?
Yeah, I've had some partnerships that, Jack has sort of created for me. So he primarily is my dealer, and but I sort of have this, I ask for what I want.
Okay, let's go backwards a moment, because when you and I were working together at McCormick Place, you were not yet represented by Jack Shaman Gallery in New York, so that you made a fair amount of progress in your career without a gallery backing you, supporting you, right?
Definitely, and I think that, back in, I was like a gypsy. I just sort of like, found spaces to work in and to exhibit in. I don't think was not and is not still my priority. My priority is producing work. And then once the work is produced, then finding venues that perhaps could support the work. So I think that that's always been my sort of structure, is that it's about, making a body of work and then sort of looking for opportunities for it to be shown.
So you've made some condos, round pieces that were 16 feet in diameter. And you would make those and you wouldn't have an idea of where they would go or where they would be exhibited?
No, I've never thought about it with any of the work, because I didn't want that to be, a limitation on, whether or not it fits anywhere. It's really, again, it has to be this size because it's what I feel. It's what I know that it to be. So I really try to sort of remove any sort of gallery sort of associations with my work. Keep it completely out of my studio and my sort of process of thinking and making.
How much time do you spend thinking about what's next? I mean, historically speaking, your work is incredibly labor intensive, and yet you have I guess a lot of it's the mantra of labor, where, there's a doing and a repetition and sewing and adding and sewing and adding, which I guess is kind of like meditating. Which gives you some mental space for ideas to hatch. Am I right about this?
Yeah, I think that space happens in that sort of meditation period. For me, it's a particular time where, I'm quiet. And being quiet sort of, for me, brings a lot of clarity and understanding for what I'm doing, as also it allows me to think about some new ideas, and I'm always thinking. And what I tend to do is that if an idea comes to mind, I sort of hold on to it in my mind, and if within 3 days, if it's still there, then I jot it down. Otherwise, I really don't write it down.
But you talk about the fear thing, too. I mean, a lot of the steps that you've taken in the last few years have been really brave. Are you sometimes afraid of your own vision?
No.
Yes?
No, I'm not. I'm not afraid. I think, the anxiety is there. But I think that, again, you set in a level of trust. It's really all about trusting yourself and in my instincts. And I sort of have nurtured and sort of restructured, reshaped, and just being quiet has gotten me closer to my truth. So I think that that plays a great deal into my decisions.
And give you confidence.
Yeah, totally.
All right, well, let's talk about the piece you did in New York recently. Tell me, how did this come about?
The performance heard, which we're here in Denver right now, rehearsing that as we speak. But it came about working with Creative Time, and then also New York Transit, Art for Transit. Art for Transit wanted to do a project. Creative Time has always wanted to do a project, and this opportunity just sort of happened to sort of come together at a perfect time. And so that's how it sort of came about. And it was probably the most, I would say, probably the most extraordinary experience in terms of it really, I finally understood why I do what I do.
Oh, cool. Talk about that.
Well, you know, it was, you know, I understand my purpose. I understand that I want to use art as a vehicle for change. I want to be, you know, I want to work within community. You know, I'm not just an artist. I'm an artist with a conscience. I'm an artist that with a social conscience. And so I think that this opportunity allowed me to sort of really tap into all of these sort of concerns for me.
Have they been in contact with you? You know, had Creative Time and Art for Transit been in contact with you for a period of time and Nick, let's do something, Nick, let's do something? Or did it all happen within a matter?
No, they had been sort of in contact a number of times, but it just wasn't really the right sort of fit. And, you know, I'm also one of those types of artists that really, you know, I'm interested in whether or not it fits. If this is, you know, where I'm at in a particular sort of moment in time, and is this what I want to do with this kind of proposal or an opportunity? So, you know, I sort of also sort of think it through. You know, when a project comes up, I'm, you know, it's not just about the project, but how does the project benefit me at the end of the day?
Okay, good. I mean, you know, we're talking about a lot of things we talk about frequently in this course, you know, and what part of that's doing what resonates, and what's in it for the artist, and what is it that you can give, you know, to society, and how do we raise the level of the pond while taking care of ourselves, etc. I bet you, I mean, my sense is that what you got out of Heard and doing it in New York was bigger and grander than what you expected by a long shot.
It was, well, number one, to think that, you know, the ultimate space in terms of performance, public performance space, Grand Central Station, I don't think it could get much better than that.
I think you're right.
And, you know, it was very frightening at the beginning because, you know, I'm working with Alvin Ailey School, but you guys, we had 3 hours to come up with a choreographed piece, which was on a Sunday, and then the following Monday was the first performance at 11 o'clock. So part of me was like, oh my God, and the other part of me was like, well, you know, I can look at Grand Central Station as also a lab that we're developing the piece in this sort of, you know, stripped down box. So, and then knowing how dancers work, I knew that I could structure a piece quite quickly. And then knowing my work, that, you know, if I chose to not even choreograph a piece and just if the horses were to just stand in Grand Central Station, that would be grand enough. So part of it is that the work is solid enough to where, you know, I don't really have to, I can sort of get away with that, creating a lot of movement if I choose to do that. But, you know, it was an opportunity, again, to work within community, to really sort of create this immersive experience with New York, and then also to bring this sort of opportunity to the public, and what I was interested in for the public's sort of to receive was to get us back to this place where we dream. You know,
Say it again.
To get us back to this place where we dream. We tend to not dream anymore, and for me, that's really what it's all about.
That's beautiful. I don't know where to go with that one any further. That's beautiful. How long ago was the show in Denver planned?
In New York?
No, Denver.
In Denver? Denver, you know, most of the museum shows are either 2 to 3 years out. And so with knowing that, so it was about 2 years out. And so within that time frame, you know, I've come to Denver maybe 3 or 4 times, look at the space with the number of exhibitions that were in this particular gallery, and then also talking with the curators and directors about what I'm thinking about. So, you know, it's a process that you know, it's far enough in advance in terms of ways to sort of think about space and what you're wanting to sort of achieve. And that with every solo show, for me, I've made the decision that I always want to present and produce a new work.
So how long ago was Heard planned?
Heard was probably a year out.
Do you have any other, so you're working on 2 huge projects at one moment, at least.
Yeah, most of the projects, like what's coming up is that there's a solo show at ICA in February, which, you know, I've been working on that, and we've sort of have structured what that's going to be. That's in February. In September is my solo show at the gallery in New York. I'm working on that as we speak in terms of gathering materials and doing the research. So, you know, I'm not interested in working under stress or under...
I think that would be stressful for a lot of people.
Yeah, but I think you know, as you start to mature, you realize that you don't want stress. So you sort of work, you structure, hopefully, you know, your career starts to develop, and you start to then sort of see this calendar of how your career lays out, and then that's how you start to, you know, structure it. So it's a lot, you know, so for me it allows me to have a life, and I understand what the demands are in terms of, you know, if I'm doing a massive show, and what does that mean? Do I need 10 assistants, or do I need 20? And then when do I bring on an additional set of assistants? I mean, so it's all sort of, again, strategically designed to where that when it gets to the point where the work is then shipped out of the studio, I'm ready to go.
How many people have you been working with in the past few years? How big a team do you have?
I think the team has fluctuated from 6 to 10.
And how did you ever learn to be such a damn good manager?
But, you know, the moment that I came on board with Jack, there was a lot of growing up that I had to do quite quickly. Not that I was prepared, but there was growing pains. There were moments where I was like really distraught and emotional because, you know, for a gallery to call you one day and say you need to hire 4 full-time assistants, and when you've never had a assistant, is quite, you know, it's a big move. It's, you know, all of a sudden then you have to become a corporation. You have to, you know, you're responsible for 4 individuals. And they're responsible for your work, so it's a lot of it's a lot of sort of structure that has to be set in place. And I think all of that comes from teaching too. You know, being a full-time professor at the School of the Art Institute, you know, there's some structure that, you know, that I have to sort of set into place. And then, I'm working with students, so I understand, communication and working with a group of people. So it's not that, it's new. It's just that, the studio practice has to be sort of redesigned.
I don't feel like the integrity of your work has suffered one iota, and maybe it's even gone up by having people help you create it. Is it a challenge to maintain the integrity?
Oh, yes. Well, I don't think it's a challenge if you pay attention to it. I am not, and never will give up that part of my studio practice. Basically what my assistants do in the studio, they sort of prepare the work to a certain point, and then I take over. So, and I cannot allow that to be an interference in the work.
Okay. And when you go from like 6 to 10 and to 6, are the floaters frequently people who come back over again, or are you bringing in new blood periodically, or both?
No, it's frequently they stay or they come back, but it's pretty much, it's not that you're not just hiring anybody. You come in for a one-day sample testing, so you're giving a sort of a set of materials, and then you're giving a instructional sort of sheet, and then we sort of put you in a room and you produce what needs to be produced, and so that determines who I can hire. So you have to have skills. We don't have time to sort of teach you how to do something.
Are most of them former students?
None of them. No one's a former student. Never has been. And
not even Cheryl Pope? Cheryl wasn't a student?
Cheryl was a student.
Okay.
Great. A graduate student. But most of them are from other cities that have moved to Chicago. No one's really, only Cheryl has been the only one from the school.
Interesting. Okay. And teaching. Now, you like teaching?
I love teaching.
Tell me, all right, so teaching, you love it, which is a great reason to do it. How does it affect your career? Does it get in the way, or does it serve it, or both?
It doesn't get in the way because I've made choices there too to not allow it to get in the way. And but I like teaching because I really like being able to be an influence. I like being able to watch students reach revelations, and I try to sort of structure and nurture them in a way where, where they build this trust within themselves to be able to sort of come out of a 2-year graduate program and to know how to trust yourself is so, so critical. And I like being able to sort of see this evolution appear in front of me where someone started and then where they end up at the end of a 2-year program, and just that progression, which, is a reflection on me. It also keeps me sort of relevant in terms of being around young sort of people with ideas that are fresh, that are sort of current, that are, different. So it's a very sort of, it's fuel, it's food for the soul. So it really sort of, I really like being there.
What are you teaching?
I'm the head of the graduate program, Fashion, Body, and Garment. So
which graduate program?
Pardon me?
Say it again. Which graduate program?
It's a Fashion, Body, and Garment. So it's a program that's housed within the fashion department. But most of the students don't make clothing, so they're doing things that are associated with the body, but are working between performance, video, object making. So it's interesting.
So there's a large fine art element to what they're doing?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. That's cool. you tell me periodically that you're shy.
I'm very
And
sure.
but you don't come across as being particularly shy, at least not, in the amount of time we've been talking this evening.
Well, I mean, I am shy. I am doing this, but I am shy.
I mean, you told me a couple of years ago you'd never do this because, you were too shy. I want to know, here, I don't want to so much talk about you being shy as much as there are many artists who are shy. And somehow you have to get beyond that because your art needs to get out into the world. How do you address your shyness? How do you use it as a tool, or how do you transcend it to have the career you have?
I just sort of suck it up and take a deep breath and just charge forward. But, ideally, where I'm at right now is that, which I've talked to the gallery about, is that my next solo show, I don't want an opening and I don't want a dinner. I'm interested in programming around the exhibition, but I'm not, I don't think, I think I'm a messenger first and artist second. So I think that's why it's difficult for me to sort of be in front of a group of people, because I don't think that's my role. I think that I'm here to deliver a deed and then I move on to my next assignment.
So if you weren't an artist, you would be an evangelist.
No, I am that now.
Oh, you are that now.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. All right. That's amazing. Cool. All right, so let's go to the future. How far ahead are you thinking now? I mean, are you thinking like 2015 or further, 2018? It sounds like such a big number, but it's not that far away.
I've got projects that are already sort of in place to 2017.
Can you tell me like what kind of project you're thinking?
Well, I don't really know. I just know that, I have a major project at Mass MoCA in 2016.
That'll be big.
It's, oh my God, I was just there 3 weeks ago looking at the space, and it's just,
it's huge.
It's so fucking insane.
Yeah.
But, I went there to sort of walk, just to immerse myself in the space. And then I'm gonna figure it out.
Okay, now before you did Heard, you had a vision about things you'd be doing 2 to 4 or 5 years out into the future. And then Heard happens with a higher level of success and popularity and impact than any mortal could imagine. How does that change your trajectory, alter your plans?
And it doesn't change. What it changes is that it it ramps up my game. So it's like, my level of responsibility gets to be, it's bigger. But I'm very much aware of that, and I'm going to be okay.
Oh, there's no question about that. Have you ever traveled to Africa?
You know what? I just packed up I've been there a number of times. I just finished a piece for Dakar, commission piece for the U.S. Embassy there that they just finished building. So I'm going to be going back there September to install the piece. Why do you ask?
Well, because a lot of your work draws on that tradition, and there's a lot of tactile influences that, have so much impact when you look at a photo, but have so much more impact when you can see somebody wearing it or living it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. But I think, my influences really stem from, looking at sort of ceremonial and ritual from around the world, looking at, Haitian, looking at Trinidad, Carnival, Mardi Gras Indians, Soul Train, George Clinton. I mean, it's all just sort of a mix of all of it.
Yeah. Let's see if some of these folks who are listening in have some questions. I see that Layla does. Layla, do you want go ahead and ask? Layla, you had your hand up for a while. Other people, if you've got questions, raise your hand. Let's see what Nick has to say. Go ahead.
Hi, Nick. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Sure.
I'm amazed by your work. I'm sorry I didn't know about it until now, but now I'm really glad. I have a ton of questions, but I'll ask you just one or two. When you were talking about claiming your quiet time, do you just take that whenever you need to, or do you do it daily? I mean, how do you work it into your life?
Well, I think that time comes into play. You'll be amazed that it just sort of happens. Like after the studio closes down at 5, I maybe take a break, and then I come back to the studio from, I would say, 8 to midnight. So I'm there alone. So
okay.
That's you're forced to sort of face yourself. And so, I think after doing this for 15, 20 years, you find that you can get a lot of work done on yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
May I ask one other question, or shall I wait?
Hold on, because I want to trump you because you asked a question that made me think of a question, and then I'll give you another shot, and other people will have questions
All right.
too. But so, Nick, you talk about, time for yourself and being able to look into yourself, as well as being a messenger and having something to communicate. I'm wondering, I guess those two can exist simultaneously, can't they?
Well, yeah, I think they do, but I think that they happen at two different times. The delivery is, the delivery doesn't happen until you've created something, so.
Okay, cool. Layla, I'll get back to you in a second. Elizabeth, go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering, what role does repetition play in your work? Can you hear me?
What role does repetition play in my work?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I think when I think about pattern, I think it plays a great deal. I think that repetition plays a great deal in my work through, again, just sort of elements and aspects of the work that I want to sort of carry through the work. There's repetitions there. I think the momentum in terms of, when do I sort of jump into the center of things, and when do I jump back out? And what is that time frame there? There's repetition there. I think I spend a great deal of time looking at, what does an exhibition do? I produce the work, I put it out there in the world, but then I think I learned a lot more about my work by seeing what happens. And so I find that there's repetition there. Where are things repeated? What type of magazines, who's interested in the work? Who's talking about the work? How do you sort of remain and maintain that sort of trajectory and consistency there? So I think that it's always it's relevant, it's very present in the work.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Lila, go ahead and ask another question.
When you're creating a project like hers, Nick, do irrelevant ideas intrude on your process? And if so, what do you do with them? How do you note them or observe them?
I sort of, this is the first sort of project that I did where I was not sort of in the center of it. I was able to be on the outside looking in as a voyeur. So it really provided me the most, to be able to sort of understand how people feel and respond to your work. It's something that I didn't think that I would ever be able to have. And it provided me this opportunity to look inward at a body of work that part of me, I know that I created it, but part of me did not know what the outcome would be. the results. So that was really sort of amazing.
And so if any irrelevant ideas came up, they just seemed right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always stuff that comes up. You know, I'm in Denver now, and I think the one thing that sort of what was amazing is that I realized that I want to take HERD around the world, and I want to continue to work within communities, building the peace. So here in Denver, you know, it's completely different. We're working with a different set of dancers. We're working with the Denver Orchestra in terms of creating the score for the piece. It's going to be outside in the park. So it's changing and reshaping itself quite a bit.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Cool. Lila, thank you. Danielle, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danielle.
I'm an absolute huge fan of your work. I absolutely love it. And I saw it at the YBCA in San Francisco.
Good.
And I'm so sorry I missed that in Grand Central. But I would love for you to talk more about being a messenger when you say so clearly you're merely a messenger. And I was curious when you realized that in your career, and then in what form, in what sense, what state of reverie, or what sort of spiritual side, people, voices, what is it? Who are you hearing as a messenger?
You know, I think that once you find your purpose, I think that that's what we all are. We're here to sort of matter and be useful in the world. And I think that and I remember, you know, my mother coming to the studio. I would be talking to her on the phone, and she's like, you know, have you started going back to church? And I'm like, no, I don't really believe in that kind of thing. And then I just remembered one day, all of a sudden, I realized that art is my religion. So I think that with that revelation setting in place, I realized that that's what I am. So that's where the whole idea of, you know, I'm not, because I never really understood why do I have to sort of be responsible for what my work is about. Because it's not necessarily about, what it's about for me may not be what it's about for you.
So when you have people, when you contextualize your work or, you know, write statements, do you have people that help you, or as you created your work, have you had people help you verbally, you know, write it out? Because I'm having a huge problem writing my statement about my new work.
People read, you know, a statement, but I try to keep it pretty much within what my beliefs are. So, you know, because I think, again, it's what my beliefs are, and not necessarily, and I try to keep them very sort of vague, very open, very organic, so it's not sort of directed in one sort of linear way.
Okay, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be watching you right now. I'm starstruck.
Right.
Can I also say one other funny thing? Sorry, I just want to say I watched Beyonce's documentary, and the only good part of it was seeing your piece in Jay-Z and Beyonce's house.
Oh my God! Right.
So I just had to tell you that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Maria, your turn. Go ahead, Maria.
Just saw your sound suit in the Brooklyn Museum. Enjoyed seeing that.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I was just curious. Paul mentioned that you had quite a bit of success prior to having a gallery, and I was wondering what kinds of opportunities you looked for, what types of venues you were interested in, and whether those opportunities just presented themselves after you had the work, or whether you were thinking of that in advance.
I think there's a combination of both. It's sort of you know, there's all sorts of interesting things. You know, there's all sorts of interesting partnerships. There's all sorts of interesting collaborations. You know, there's, you know, it's about, you know, artists coming together collectively and making the decision to, let's create a show. And it may be that you find a warehouse space, or that you, look into galleries that sort of have downtime. I mean, so, it's about sort of looking around and seeing what is available and how can you make something happen, and not be waiting for a gallery to pick you up. It's not really about that. It's about, continuing to find venues and ways to somehow get your work out into the world. And I think that, it's like, could you possibly show in the library? Could you possibly show in a restaurant that frequently shows art? I mean, so there's all these sort of things and places that are accessible and available for that to happen. So, you show in a restaurant, well, there you go. You've got an opening. So it's not that it's complicated. It's just being open to that as a possibility and not waiting.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Great messages, dude. Thank you. Ciel, go ahead.
Wonderful to see you, because I just saw your exhibition in Denver, and it was it was brilliant. It knocked me out, especially the piece of the video of you dancing in the black, hairy, furry suit. It kept coming together like a Rorschach. That was absolutely. I think I sat there for 30 minutes, absolutely transfixed. And I'm wondering how you did that. Did you have two cameras, or how does that happen that it comes together like that?
No, we had one camera, and then we just mirrored the two images together.
You had a mirror as well.
No, we did that. We did it that we shot it, filmed the piece, and then we did all of that on the computer. But that's exactly what I was going after, and the sound is magnificent. It is just sort of, if it was in surround sound in space, but I really sort of, and again, that's where new ideas come about. It's that, to be able to sit and watch that piece, and, for me, I'm discovering new shapes.
It was absolutely shamanic.
Thank you.
Felt like I was watching a shaman. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. I'm not sure where the phone's coming from.
On the ringing, the phone's ringing.
It's probably for Nick. Hold on a sec here. James, go ahead. James, you ready?
Yeah, I've got a question about the sound flutes. On one hand, they're used in performances, and then later on they seem to have become more objects that are on display. How do you feel about that transformation from them being used as performance pieces and props to them being more like art objects that are just positioned in a museum or in somebody's display or somebody's collection?
Right. I think that, I think where I was sort of, where that sort of comes from, it's like, when I go to museums, and let's say Museum of Natural History, for example, so they're taking these objects that are maybe utilitarian or sort of vestment, and, we're in their own display, so we're forced to look at them as an object, as a sculptural form, and yet they also played a particular sort of role within a particular culture. So that's when the beginning of that sort of dual role, opportunity or option sort of came into play in my work. That, I like the fact that there is this sort of static sort of quality and aesthetic about the work, but yet there is still this sort of notion that movement can be applied to it. So, again, it's the options. I like to be able to sort of create work where there's these options. Could it be for performance, or could performance be really a video piece that I'm going for? So as I'm sort of developing and working through ideas, I'm also sort of questioning all of these sort of options and what will be the final sort of conclusion, if any.
Cool. All right. You know, it's a really great observation, you know, seeing that at the Field Museum or Natural History Museum and establishing that connection. That's cool. Herb, go ahead, Herb.
Hey, Herb.
Hi. Nick, I love your piece at McCormick Center. It's
okay.
It's a really beautiful piece. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And I was curious if I could see Heard on YouTube or somewhere on the net.
Uh-huh. I can't. I can't hear you.
The question was, Nick, is Heard available on the internet? Can someone who didn't make it to New York see it online?
I think there's, you know, bits and pieces of it on YouTube.
I think so too. And how do you spell Heard?
Could we just
H-E-A-R-D.
You have an A in Heard or no A in Heard?
I do have an A in Heard.
Okay.
You know, I thought about Heard the way that I think about the sound suit, so I wanted to sort of continue to sort of carry the word over to where it still is about sound.
Yeah, but you also have the ambiguity, which is wonderful.
Right.
Cool, okay. Lisa. Hold on, let me unmute you. Go ahead, Lisa.
Have you ever found yourself in a creative rut? And if you have, what have you done to bring yourself out of it?
You know, I used to be there, but not necessarily anymore. I think you step out of it by just throwing yourself back into it. You know, you just fucking like force yourself through some shit and just keep working it out. You know, it's not really, it's, you know, I just sort of keep plowing and finding, yeah, I just think that's what you have to do. I think like anything, you've got to get yourself through it.
So basically, the notion of getting through it is by pushing forward and not taking a break for 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, I take breaks, sure.
Yeah, not because you have a creative block.
No, it's just because I'm like, need a break, you know. And if I have a creative block, I have creative blocks, but, you know, that's part of the process.
So that's a normal part of the process?
Totally. It's a very normal part of the process. You know, and it's still, you know, there's something that's still stimulating and you know, that's interesting for you, and it's okay to have creative block. I mean, it's maybe that's sort of time for you to sort of pull back and sort of reflect on a moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Monica, your turn. Go ahead, Monica.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. I'm wondering, you have so much going on right now. It just seems like, I'm wondering how you actually structure your day and your work day and how that changed when you added assistants to your studio.
I think what has remained the same is that, you know, I get up at 6 in the morning, I work out. So since it's summer, I get up and I work out for 45 minutes, and I run on the lake. So that's how I start my morning, every morning. And the assistants come in. I sort of, you know, have things prepared for them. And so I just, you know, it's a job. This is my 8 to 5 job. I mean, well, for me, 8 to 12 or whatever. But it's a job. It is not anything other than a job, but it's a job that is extraordinary to have. But, you know, I treat it like that. I'm in the studio at the same time as if I was teaching that day.
Did your process change when you brought assistants into the studio?
You know, what changed it relieved me from a great deal of the work. So, but, you know, I was, at the beginning, I was very much hands-on. I was, you know, I was right there. My student, as a matter of fact, I was in the same room with everyone. So, because it was really critical for me to maintain that sort of level of quality, and the integrity had to be there. So, now I have the studio separate from my assistants, but it's still within the same room. And then I have a studio sort of manager that sort of runs the studio. But then I'm there every day. I go through the studio, so I'm looking and seeing what everybody's doing. And so, again, consistency, I know what I want. I know what it has to be. And
well, that's great. So you're able to work on your own part of the process on your own while everybody else is doing their job.
And I'm learning and trying out new sort of technical things. And so, once I have sort of established that and understand it, and it's what I want, then I sort of teach that to my head studio managers, and then they then teach that to my assistants. And so that's how things start to, that's how we're able to sort of maintain and keep a real sort of tight sort of consistency within the studio.
Right, thank you.
I mean, it's all a bit crazy because a lot of times they have, they're like, what is he doing? But, it's never ever the same each week in the studio. We're always exploring new sort of ideas.
I think we have time for one, maybe not two questions. I'm not sure. Madeline, go ahead, Madeline.
Just wondering, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi.
Thanks for doing this. This is so wonderful. Just wondering how you got started in the marketplace. You seem like you're so focused on your work and just making beautiful things. And, I'm just wondering how that happened. Everything seems so natural for you. Could you just talk a little about how you and the marketplace kind of got together?
Well, I think that, that really just, I don't think that's me. I think it's really the gallery. It's, how they sort of, once you get to me, what's important is that, I'm not only interested in finding just any gallery. I want a gallery, I look at, my contract, my relationship with the gallery the same way that, let's say Michael Jordan would establish a contract with the Bulls. It's like, I need certain things done, and I want to move my career in a particular way, and you're getting 50% of my money, so I need you to, can you do this for me? So it's about that, and so I'm sort of somewhat, I am removed from that sort of part of the studio practice, but at the same time, I'm very much invested in that because I'm interested in knowing, how, it's just sort of like pricing your work. It's like, it's so intense and it's very, it's so organic at the same time. But, at the same time, I want to be a part of, how does my gallery make these decisions? And where, how are you, what is the structure in terms of how you want to shape my career? What does that look like? Talk to me about it. Talk me through it. So part of me has to be very strong. I've got to be able to stand up for what I feel are my beliefs. The gallery has their agenda. You should also have your agenda. Part of the gallery works for me. I work for part of the gallery. So it's all these sort of things that you constantly are thinking about and thinking through and, trying to stay on top of at the same time. But it's very interesting for me. The whole process is very interesting.
I'm just wondering.
Go ahead.
Can I mention something else?
Sure, go ahead.
Wondering how you got involved with that gallery. What did you do?
What I did is that I dropped off my portfolio there one day, And that's how it happened.
They already knew of you by that time, didn't they?
You know what? No, they really actually did not.
Oh, wow.
And then, you know, they called me and was, you know, we're interested in your work. And I said, okay. And, no, actually, a friend was going to New York and dropped it off for me. And then they called and said they were interested in the work. And I said, okay. And then they said, are you with anyone? And I said, no. And they were like, why? And I said, well, I really haven't found a relationship that I felt that's compatible. So that's sort of how it got started.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. I think we should wrap this up. Nick, I think you have been inspirational in this discussion this evening. It's clear that you are a fabulous artist and a fabulous human being and a fabulous friend, and you've got a great smile. You know, it's really wonderful that you were here with us tonight. I totally appreciate it. Go kick ass in Denver, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well.